Good evening. Today is the 26th day of December 2016, and we are continuing with our explorations in Savitri with dear Alok Bhai. Namaskar. We are in Book 2, Canto 6. Book 2 is the book of the traveler of the worlds. Aswapati is going through all these kingdoms. And these are the kingdoms now, kingdoms and godheads of the greater life. For those of you who have books, it's page 179, about the center of the page. For by the form,
Yes.
the formless is brought close.
I've often heard people say that death is a mystery. But I feel birth is a greater mystery. Birth means something which forms. That's how originally birth is defined. Birth is not just this human birth, but birth is entering into a state of limitation, into a form. Through a form, the infinite limits itself. Death is a natural consequence of that. So the first mystery is birth. Another thing is, very often we think that life is opposite of death. But opposite of death is not life but birth. If at all we have to use the word opposite. In the divine sense, in the divine harmony, there are no opposites but complementarities. But here we experience them as either or. So life continues even after death of the body. It continues on other planes with a different kind of experience, different sense organization, different kind of even mentation. And then it goes on and on till it touches that supreme height. So this is where we have an understanding of life, not just the processes of life. Processes of life are simply one kind of device that nature has created for its purpose. But it can create another device, another process. So processes are important to understand how it works, but not why it is there and what is its purpose. It's like with anything. Initially, you see, we had those radios which were, big ones, and I still remember listening to the commentary.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Now the same thing is transmitted in a different way, picked up in microchips, and you can actually even see it, not just hear it. So new devices have come up to relay the same thing. So life is ever busy with creating new and new devices. And what is it trying to do? It is trying to manifest something which it has glimpsed, felt deep within. So it is trying to create all kinds of things on every plane to bring some semblance, to catch the formless into form, to catch the eternal in the flow of time. And that is a big challenge. And they are very beautiful lines which are going to follow. But first, those 3 lines where we had stopped. It is near to heavenlier heavens than earth's eyes see, a direr darkness than man's life can bear. So our life moves in a very narrow range, and we think this is life. Like, with light, we think that limits of our sight is the limit of light. But scientists will tell us that there is light in different frequencies existing beyond our capacity to see, just as there are sounds which are inaudible. Something is coming to you.
Well, it's about Sri Aurobindo's statement on darkness.
Yeah.
That there is no darkness.
There is no darkness.
There is only light.
Yes.
Because God is everywhere.
Yeah.
And where God is, there is light.
And the mother gave something very similar and interesting. She said, after everybody deliberated on death, and each one wrote a kind of a mini thesis. So last was mother's comment. And mother gave a short and sweet comment. In fact, there is no death. In fact, there is no death. There is only life.
And he says, our sense, by its incapacity, has invented darkness.
Yes. Yes, its incapacity. That's it.
Yeah.
So we move in a narrow range and therefore we think this is the limit of reality. But it's not the limit of reality, it is only our first contact, an imperfect contact through an imperfect consciousness of reality. But as we increase and expand the range, or as it increases and expands due to either natural evolution over a period of time or through a concentrated evolution called yoga, we begin to become aware of things which are beyond and things which are below. And there too there is life. That's the beauty of it. And what is life doing there, that we will see. A direr darkness than man's life can bear, it has kinship with the demon and the god. A strange enthusiasm has moved its heart. This is the characteristic movement of life. Enthusiasm, will, joy, force, this is its natural movement. But then we see also in life its opposites. So what they are, we will discover. But right now it is enthusiasm. It hungers for heights. It passions for the supreme. It hunts for the perfect word, the perfect shape. It leaps to the summit thought, the summit light. For by the form, the formless is brought close, and all perfection fringes the absolute. See, this is the irony, and this in a way is the cause of our agony also. So Mother says at one place that to want a perfect person in relationship to yourself is to want a personal divine. Because we want everything perfect, perfect, perfect. It is the nature of life to seek perfection. But wherever the problem is, the solution is also there. So the perfection is within us. And we want to find it outside, to look at it outside. But it's within us. And when we discover within ourselves, then perhaps much that we today understand as imperfection will be a perfection in the making. So it'll change our perspective.
I remember that early story from Sat Prem, The Adventure of Consciousness, where the man goes around to all people and he says, "Have you seen God? Have you seen
Yes.
God?" And he's never satisfied. And then he says one day, he is here.
Here
and
he
then
is.
he realizes.
Yes, here he is.
Yeah.
So it is in search for that, and now we have these marvelous lines. A child of heaven who never saw his home. So when people use the word, there are orphanages, and when we use the word orphan, actually this is a very misleading word. At one level, nobody is an orphan because there is the divine inside, and he will find a way. He'll figure out. Something or the other will happen. That story of Shakuntala in Indian thought. You can't imagine that the ancient name of India is Bharatvarsh. And you know the name, how does Bharat come from? Where does it come from? It comes from a child called Bharat. And who was Bharat? Bharat was born to Shakuntala and Dushyant. They are married, and he forgets and goes away, and it's a very interesting story. And who is Shakuntala? She is born of Vishwamitra and a heavenly damsel, Menaka. And both abandon the child the moment she is born. This fellow thinks my tapasya has gone off, so he goes into tapasya, and this lady says, "Oh, I have not come down for this," and she goes off to heaven. So this little child is guarded by a bird, and the name of the bird is Shakun. So that's how the name comes, Shakuntala. She grows up, but look at the ways of destiny that this child will become the grandmother of the entire clan of great hero warriors, which would include, a whole lineage of Kauravas, Pandavas and whatnot. So look how destiny can play, so none is an orphan. At the same time, till we have found our heavenly home, we are all homeless. We really, and that's why we want to have or believe that this home will be heaven. Every bride that comes into a new home starts believing it's a heaven. And then she discovers it's not such a heaven. Then she wants to create a heaven out there. So this is how the story goes of all our lives, a child of heaven, life is, its origin is the divine. So that's why it can be transmuted into a life divine. This is the fundamental, essential truth that Sri Aurobindo reveals. Not that life is an illusion, life is something which is fallen, life is accursed, life is a delusion, life is an illusion. No. In its origin, it is divine. And therefore, it can be transmuted back to its original truth. This is a fundamental axiom, if you want to put it in Sri Aurobindo's thought.
Yes.
So Sri Aurobindo says, a child of heaven who never saw his home. This, of course, is about the greater life because it has wandered into the territories of ignorance. Its impetus meets the eternal at a point. It can only near and touch, it cannot hold. It can only strain towards some bright extreme. Its greatness is to seek and to create. It's a marvelous line.
Yes.
So in modern psychology, one may think it's all abstract. It's very, very practical. And I'll tell you how it's practical. It should be applied in everyday life. So all of us, within us, there is this life which is wanting to find its heaven, which it has strayed away from. And it is seeking that. So wherever we go in whatever way, like parents, heavenly home. So in our parents, we want to actually see a prototype of the heavenly parent. So we expect our mothers to be perfect in their patience and our fathers to be perfect in their understanding and our friend and beloved and husband and wife to be perfect. But it never finds. Why? Because it has to create it. Now look at the other day we were saying that on earth, there is nothing like a ready lunch. You have to make it or someone has to make it for you. So you seek and you create. And the whole effort of life is to create. Now this creation will reach a point depending on, what degree you can go on. And yet you want to create still further because you are ever dissatisfied. No, this is not it. Something else, something more. There is something left. And this anguish of life leads to so much sorrow, suffering, pain. And until we understand this anguish in its real sense, we cannot find the lasting remedy.
Those two great lines that I always recall. Like a child's soul
Yes.
left at the gates of hell, fumbling through fog in search of paradise.
Yes. This is our life. And that's why simply manipulating outer circumstances doesn't help.
You're going to speak about psychology.
Yes. So this is it. On every plane, this greatness must create. So we should not live under the illusion that life is only as we experience it or as we experience in the material world. There is life even in matter. Once Sri Aurobindo makes this remark when he said, flowers have a soul. So the disciple says, what sir? Flowers have a soul? We never knew it. Sri Aurobindo says, next you will say, you will laugh when I say that watches have life. It's a very interesting remark. And with Sri Aurobindo's life, we see that when he physically withdrew, all the three watches stopped at that point of time.
Yeah.
At 1:26, all the three watches have stopped morning. And he knew it. And now it has deeper ramifications, not only about watches. Some people believe that probably machines have life. It won't be it won't be surprising. And this, search for artificial intelligence, the famous recent one is Zarvik, or something similar to Zarvik, which Facebook founder has created. Mark Zuckerberg, he has created this robo who can communicate with him a little bit through artificial intelligence. So possibly there is already a rudiment of consciousness. Consciousness is obviously there. And even a rudiment of life, which is using this tool as a kind of toy, just as life uses us, these machines. So it opens a whole world of possibilities. On earth, in heaven, in hell, she is the same. She seeks and she creates. She finds and she loses everywhere. Of every fate, she takes her mighty part. And that's why one reason for death is because in its deepest essence, life is infinite. And it wants to have infinite experiences on a finite basis. So, not possible. So, you die, you take a new body, you have another kind of experience. You remember that, which you once mentioned, the story, Beethoven being a shoemaker in his next life.
Yes.
So, it seeks different kind of experiences because then it will discover its totality. On every plane, in every way, of every fate, not just victory, but also the experience of fall, the experience of failure. Life must experience everything. A guardian of the fire that lights the suns. She triumphs in her glory and her might. Opposed, oppressed, she bears God's urge to be born. So we see this height and the abyss. On one side, on its peaks, she is the guardian of the fire. If you read one of the Upanishads, Prashna Upanishad, one of the questions is a very interesting Upanishad of 6 questions. So one of the questions is with regard to who is the greatest Godhead. So in the Vedas they talk about fire, Agni. But Rishi Pipalad speaks of Vayu, breath. It fans the fire, it becomes the fire. Of course, a very profound whole number of passages. So on its heights, life is that. It's the breath of God which fans the fire, nourishes it. So it's, we use this expression, breath of God. It's a very well-known phrase.
And we have Virat,
Yes.
who lights his campfires
Fires.
in the sun.
Yes. We'll have that also
Yes,
coming up.
coming.
But at the same time, the same life, it's not a different life, can be oppressed, opposed, and yet within her is the urge for God to be born. So we see this in story of, again, Krishna. The parents are opposed and oppressed and put in a jail with the demons sitting with a sword, right, on their chest. But in their heart, there is the urge for God to be born. And he is born. So, everywhere it has that. But the same God who is born here in an opposed and oppressed state is the same Godhead who dwells there as the Supreme Lord. So this, in one sense, we can see the whole range. On one side is the Supreme Lord, on one other side, it is such a painful birth. Under what circumstance? And we see it in the history of all avatars. Yesterday was Christmas. So you see the birth of Christ.
Yes.
Born in a manger. Nobody knows. And crucified. But yet, at another level, he is the Supreme who has taken a human body. So, this is the beauty of the power of life. This spirit survives upon non-being's ground. World force outlasts. World disillusions shock. There's an interesting story about it. One is a small story where a man is saying, oh, it's better that I die. And suddenly death appears and says, you were looking for me? Well, who are you? I am death. No, sir, I don't want to die. But you just mentioned I want to die. So, this we may say in a certain state. And there is another more beautiful story. It's a more mystic story. This, of course, a partly humorous story. That someone goes to meet Kabir, Saint Kabir. And he's not there at his home, so he knocks the door and his daughter comes out. And she says, yes, whom do you want to meet? I want to meet the great mystic Kabir. I've heard a lot about him. So he says, well, dad has gone to a funeral and you go there and you'll meet him. So how do I recognize him? No cell phones, no special attire. Everybody is more or less wearing dhoti. And so he says, very simple. You look at them, you will see behind him a glow of sun. So he says, oh, is it? So he goes there. Now he sees a glow of sun behind everyone. So he's confused. So he says, what is this? But as they start moving away, it begins to drop off one after another. And only in one person this glow remains. So he says, are you Kabir? Yes, I am Kabir. Now, of course, this story has two senses. It is told in the traditional yoga as a sense of illusion about life, but it's not about illusion. It's about discovering the reality behind life. That's my interpretation, but traditional people won't like it. So they say, look, he had vairagya. So everybody, when they go to a funeral, they develop the vairagya. They are disillusioned. And therefore, they temporarily, by the shock of these world forces and death, they feel this is nothing. But in that nothing, they feel something which is present, something like a presence, divine presence, something which is there as, which inhabits even a dead form. That's why we do pranam even to a dead body in India, and everywhere there is a custom. But as they begin to move, most of them get back into the routine, and some retain that state of experience of reality. So here we have a beautiful line that world force outlasts world disillusion shock. For a moment you are disillusioned. Oh, life is meaningless, it's wasted. And if people can go through a critical period in their life, you have to just support them through that journey, little more, and then you will see that something else will come, the world force, and its shock will draw them back into life, and slowly that event will fade away. Because this is the power of life. It will just draw you back into itself. Dumb, she is still the word. Inert, the power.
I'd like to say something about this word dumb, because I've spoken at length with Amal Kiran about this. Dumb for us is a colloquialism that has no meaning. Dumb is always silent in Savitri. And there are dozens and dozens of lines with the word dumb, and it always means silent. Very important.
Very true. Dumb matter, dumb earth's dumb needs, yes. Something which is unexpressed.
Yes.
Dumb, she is still the word, inert, the power. So we have this famous image of Shiva lying inert, and on his breast there is the dance of Kali taking place. Even in death there is life, but it has only changed its mode. It has gone into a state of inertia, disintegration. So this is the... Here fallen is slave of death and ignorance. To things deathless she is driven to aspire, and move to know even the unknowable. The divine is unknowable because we cannot know him by the mind. We can know him only through other faculties and through a process of identification, but we cannot put him into words. Any definition which has rigid boundaries, we lose him because it's infinite by its very nature. And yet life wants to capture, life wants to know, life seeks, even in this state, even in the fallen state. Even nescient, null, her sleep creates a world. We all know this. Anybody who is, conscious of the dreams knows that even in a state of sleep, we are all the time creating forms and experiences. Speaking of dumb, before you come, there is a pregnant silence because we are all waiting for the celestial messenger, Narad. Now, I am sure we are silent outwardly, but lot is happening inside. We may be concentrating on the divine, aspiring on the divine, or we may be lost in our experiences of the day. We may be planning for something tomorrow, various things. You can't stop it. You can only divert it, you can channelize it, you can purify it, you can refine it, you can transform it, everything possible. But if you want life to stop, well, no, it doesn't work out. So, everywhere it is, on every plane.
And these mighty lines next.
Yes. Yes, these are...
When most unseen.
Yes. When most unseen, most mightily she works. Housed in the atom, buried in the clod, her quick creative passion cannot cease. And look what it It creates out of the dumb atom.
Yeah.
Countless billions of objects hanging in space, all made out of atoms. How does it do it? It's a marvel, it's a mystery.
Yeah.
Similarly, when you see living beings, just these four base and 20 amino acids or something, how does it create such variety of forms? And forms so diverse. Sometimes, it's amazing that we share 98% of our genes with the yeast. Look at the difference. Those 2% genes can create. What is this creative energy? It's worth pondering about. Such a big, some people have said we are closer to the yeast than to an ape, genetically speaking. It's not a good judgment because yeast is a fungus, though it can be used for something nice. Well, we hope we are better than that. But at least we should be useful. Doesn't matter. Whatever we are, we can be useful. Even that is meant to raise the Tao. So, even when it's most unseen, in fact, one can say when it is most still, it is most powerful. It is there. Stillness is not absence of life. Sri Aurobindo says, you will know about existence and truth when you see a rishi sitting on a mountain top alone, creating revolutions in the world. Sri Aurobindo himself was doing it. You see, every animal, before it takes the leap, it enters into a state of stillness. You look at a snake before it strikes. And that's why it takes you by surprise, because you feel it just lying inert, or it just raised its hood, but the next moment it's just gathering force. Or you see the tiger or the lion, before it leaps upon the prey or runs for the kill, it is still, it's gathering force.
In one of the recent interviews we did, there was this extraordinary moment when this person talked about Sri Aurobindo. Mother wanted to repair his room and have him move to another room. And he said, very silent, very softly, if I move, creation would collapse.
Beyond our comprehension.
Beyond.
And speaking of stillness, it also reminds me, and I was contemplating on that before you came. So, like each of us in our own way, I was remembering how when Mukul Dey came to paint Sri Aurobindo, so Sri Aurobindo gave a permission finally. So Sri Aurobindo asked like a child, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
He said, you have to sit on the couch. That's all? All right. So he sat on the couch, and Mukul Dey says, I have never seen such an extraordinary.
Yes.
He says, without batting an eyelid.
Never moved.
Not a eyelid is moving, not a muscle is twitching, and he's just sitting there. I just have to do this. He asks him this, I just have to do this. That's all? Yes. And he sits still.
Yeah.
This stillness is pregnant with power. Life is teeming inside, and the more still we become, the more we become powerful for action. And it's at many levels, I'm tempted to speak of other things, but we'll stop. Otherwise, there is no end to the mystery of life. Housed in the atom, buried in the clod, her quick creative passion cannot cease. In conscience is a long, gigantic pause. Her cosmic swoon is a stupendous face. So even when there is a pralaya, so everything is reduced to dust and scattered in space. But life is still there. It holds all the seeds within itself. Goes into a state of swoon. It's like a hibernation. But when it bounces back, very soon creation emerges with very rich creativity. This actually happened on Earth when dinosaurs died. It's very interesting that it was struck by a meteor. More or less now everybody believes this theory. And not only it finished dinosaurs, it finished most of the life on Earth. It's obviously everything was conterminous. And then there was a period of lull. But when life came, it came with a vengeance. There was such variety, such variety, such variety as it didn't exist in the pre-Paleozoic era. It's actually, and if you see it on, time scale motion, it's amazing to see that, there is very little flora and fauna and the dinosaurs are there.
And then suddenly...
And then there is finishing of everything. And then there is sparkling all over. Everything is getting filled with a huge variety of species. So the cosmic zone. And that's why it doesn't pause. Even death is just a pause. It's not the end. Time born, she hides her immortality. In death, her bed, she waits the hour to rise. So, how beautifully it... See, this is one of the beauty of Sri Aurobindo, that when you read him, it liberates us. After reading these lines, who can have fear of death? What is death? It's just a bed life has taken to rise up again. I'm reminded of Sri Aurobindo's poem Baji Prabhav. So, he is going to die. He knows it. It's an impossible battle with 50 Maratha soldiers against thousands. Some estimate, 10,000. But most conservative estimate also will be 2,000. Now, 50 versus 2,000 is no match. Holding a small gorge. And Baji Prabhu is given the task. Now, Tanaji Malsure, who goes to fetch Shivaji and all the arms, knows this fellow is going to die. My friend is sacrificing himself. So he says, I know what's your fate, but I can tell you that when you come back, I'll build such a fire for you as even the heavens will see. So Baji Prabhu says, oh, you're going to build a fire for me? You think I am this 5 feet 6 inches body? He says, don't worry. Yes, I know I'll go, but you don't have to worry about it. I know that you also will come. We'll meet once again there and talk about our glorious deeds on earth. It's a very, very inspiring poem. It can raise, I can tell you, I am not exaggerating. I have experienced it when I was terribly sick, having, on a verge of collapse, and my friend asked me, you need anything? I said, please read Baji Prabhu. And trust me, within, I didn't say like this, please read Baji Prabhu. It was totally a kind of, I please. And within half an hour, I was all sitting, propped up, feeling so energetic. And doctors wondered what has happened. It can literally make a dead person near dead. Maybe dead would be, but near dead come alive. So, it has that power in it.
I remember Amita Sen saying, give me 50 men.
Give me 50 men, that's right. Give me 50 men. Even with the light denied that sent her forth, and the hope dead she needed for a task, even when her brightest stars are quenched in night, nourished by hardship and calamity, and with pain for her body's handmaid, misuse, nurse, her tortured invisible spirit continues still to toil though in darkness, to create though with pangs. She carries crucified God upon her breast. Each passage of Sri Aurobindo throws certain images in the mind. And many images. So, one of the images that came to me when I read this passage, there are many other more profound, but something, my mind went back to India of the 60s, maybe 70s, and life in the villages, and life of the women in the villages. I don't know, many may not know it, but some may understand what I am meaning. Totally neglected, living on scorn. She has nobody who can give her love. Father has sent away. You are no more my baby. That's your home. In-laws, you are our servant and serf. You have come to take care of us, not to, you have no rights. And the child, if it is a son, tata bye bye. If it's a daughter, she may understand a little bit of her mother's pain. Nobody to share her agony with. But even in that state, some of them have created such wonderful human beings. I mean, it's amazing what power. I mean, we talk about Shivaji. Think about Shivaji's mother. What she would have been. We miss out on, these characters. How they would have, what they had done, how they nurtured, because it was within them. And they poured that anguish, that urge, that power to create into a child. That's why I feel that bringing into birth a child is also a very creative act. It should not be, just felt, oh, she's just a housewife. I can tell you it's very difficult to be a housewife. At least in India, it's far more easy to be a working woman. But much more difficult is to be a working woman and a housewife. Then you had it. But times are changing. But if you look at this, even with the light denied that sent her forth and the hope dead she needed for her task, she has no hope. The man will never change. The man whom she is wedded to in those days, he had no hope. He will not change his ways. He will not mend his ways. He will remain what he is. Yeah. And yet, she has to manage things. Even when the brightest stars are quenched in night, nobody to turn to, nourished by hardship and calamity. I have seen women sleep on the floor with nothing but a small mat while the men were sleeping on beds. It's a horror. I mean, India has a very beautiful side and we must bring it out. But we should not shy away from showing its issues and problems and defects which maybe last 100 or 200 years. So much of parda, they can't, even look at the world properly.
And yet it's the great dichotomy.
Yeah. Shakti.
The woman is
Shakti.
Shakti.
And we must bring that out because that's our truth. This is our fallen state. And that's why Sri Aurobindo says in Durga's throat, Mother India, who lies fallen. This is a fallen state. She carries crucified God upon her breast. What is crucified God? There is the divine, but he is helpless. 2 thieves lay slain by his side. In chill, insentient depths where joy is none, immured, oppressed by the resisting void, where nothing moves and nothing can become. Still she remembers, still invokes the skill the wonder worker gave her at her birth, imparts to drowsy formlessness a shape, reveals a world where nothing was before. So at every plane, at every layer, at every level, it is busy creating.
This word immured,
Yes.
locked in, confined, immured, and then oppressed by the resisting void.
Nothing is going to listen to you. It's a void, nothing to share. In realms confined to a prone circle of death, to a dark eternity of ignorance, a quiver in an inert, inconscient mass, or imprisoned in immobilized, or imprisoned in immobilized walls of force by matter's blind compulsion, deaf and mute, she refuses, motionless in the dust, to sleep. So what does she do? Gives birth to the plant, the trees, the worm, the insect. And what beautiful creations! She refuses. If nothing else, will create shells, beautiful stones, pieces of sand, particles, grains that will suddenly glimmer. There are people who have been rescued out of a state, dark state simply looking at the water flowing through a river. Because it contains life inside, and there is a moment in which we can get in touch with it and it can help us. It's just a question of contact with what is within. One of the simplest cures for depression, and I can vouch for it, is just looking at a flower, identifying with itself. It is a wonderful healer, doesn't charge you any money, doesn't give you time for the sessions, doesn't have systems in its head, it doesn't apply a theory. It just lives, breathes, is that beauty and joy in a small little space and form. And you look at it and you get nourished, nurtured, and feel rejuvenated.
And Sri Aurobindo's comment that is eternal. Flowers are the moment's representation of things that are in themselves eternal.
Yes. And that is why when people say, now we have psychiatrists and, I'm supposed to be one of them. It's a irony. I keep making fun. But nevertheless, now people go to psychiatrists. But in India, we didn't have psychiatrists for a long time. And even now people are hesitant to go to a psychiatrist. So what were their resources? They very often you'll say they turn to the Gita, religious scriptures. They forget one thing, that in traditional Indian homes there were also flowers.
Yes.
And I feel it is very good if we can, get into this habit of keeping flowers in home. It doesn't matter, you don't have to offer it right before a idol. Just let the space be filled with flowers. It's rejuvenating. It's, every time I walk back to Desiree and there are flowers on the road, what flowers transformation. So I see them and I wonder, look at these flowers, they've fallen, they are so beautiful, they have such wonderful name. And they are just lying in the dust with, cars and everything passes by. But they don't fade away just like that. They resist. And they remain there. They are such a beautiful sight.
It is.
Yes.
And the transformation flower used to bloom in a very specific season. To show you the change, you can see transformation flowers every day of the year now.
Wow, this is a very interesting piece of...
Yes.
Wow, this is very interesting. And
It's the
you are an
evolution.
expert on flowers, among many other things. But so it's interesting to know this.
It's incredible.
I didn't know this. That
And you see in the early morning when they fall, you can stand under the tree and they fall on your head.
Yeah. And at night you can pick them up and take them to your
Absolutely.
house.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, few more lines and then maybe we can stop. Then, for a rebel waking's punishment, given only hard mechanic circumstance as the enginery of her magic craft, she fashions godlike marvels out of mud. I have seen one such, there are plenty of such marvels. One such place where you look at the mountain and it looks like the peak plateau. It's a plateau on top. It looks like a reclining Buddha. Now it's made out of hard material and you must have seen certain rocks, extremely beautiful. And you wonder, Kedarnath is a rock. So, how has nature created such things? Shaligram, in Indian houses it's worshipped. Shaligram is a stone found in depths and you can almost feel that it has a Janeu and it's a symbol of Lord Shiva. So how does life create out of such hard material? And of course it applies at every level. It is its power. So even when such material is given, she fashions godlike marvels out of mud. In the plasm, she sets her dumb, immortal urge. So amoeba doesn't die. Unless you blast it with medicines, it reproduces. Bacteria, unless you blast it, reproduces. Viruses, they keep on exchanging material. They are the first forms where there is an incessant urge to live. Immortality is its first. But as life becomes more and more complex, multicellular organisms die because it's very difficult to hold together the many components of a form. That is the problem. But the simple unicellular organisms can actually indefinitely multiply. So there is very interesting. Helps the live tissue to think, the closed sense to feel. It's because of life. If life is withdrawn, then you ask somebody who is in a state of disillusionment, life is withdrawn inside temporarily, and you say, what do you feel? He'll say, I feel nothing. But that means it's a terrible state. It's better to say, I feel depressed, I feel angry. I am very comfortable if patients say this. I'm very angry. When they say, I feel nothing, I am a bit cautioned, something is amiss. Feel something. There's a very nice Urdu couplet I remember. I'll say it in Urdu, then we can stop this, feeling nothing. The poet says, Kisi ranjish ko hawa do, कि मैं जिंदा हूं अभी. He says, ranjish is, enmity. He says, your indifference is killing. Be angry. I am still alive. I will feel you are alive to me. But if you become indifferent, then it means there is nothing. So it says that, be alive. It's the sign of life. But life is there even in that. It makes the senses to feel, the tissue to think. You see, pranayama, it makes the brain energy so much developed, brahmacharya, simply because it gets transmuted into that energy, the spiritual energy and the intellectual energy. It's basically the same thing, life. At the base, it is life in matter, which can be uplifted right up to what tremendous feats have been done by people who have practiced these things. We know Sri Aurobindo Swami Vivekananda's example.
Yes.
Flashes through the frail nerves poignant messages. In a heart of flesh, miraculously loves. To brute bodies gives a soul, a will, a voice. This is the magic and the miracle of life. In this powerful line, in a heart of flesh, miraculously loves. It's a miracle. Because ask a scientist, it will say it just pumps blood. There are valves, there is circulation. But ask anybody who is feeling love, where are you feeling love? He'll locate it here. He'll not locate it here. He'll not say, I love here. Love is here. It flows from the heart. People feel a pang, literally in the heart, when they go through dejection or state. The pang is here. The heart takes the brunt. How is it that this mechanical organ, which does nothing but pumps energy, and heart is very sensitive to emotions, to excitement, to quietude, to a nourishing energy of love. So in a heart of flesh, miraculously loves. So we'll stop here on page 181.